So another judge is temporarily upholding the block on DOGE, accessing the Treasury Department, at least until Friday, although they are now saying it is okay for the Treasury Secretary to access his own department now. Good to know that the judge feels it's okay to give permission to the president to allow his Treasury Secretary to do his job with his own department. What kind of planet are we actually living on here? This is outrageous. This is massive judiciary overreach by these judges. So why are they doing all of this? I mean, sure, there's the political, judicial activism, but there's got to be more to this, right? Well, you see, the Democrat Party right now is in shambles. They are aimless, they are leaderless, they are rudderless, and they are losing ground at every turn to President Donald Trump. His momentum is growing, and they are in danger of becoming completely irrelevant if they don't do something, and fast. Every single action taken by the Democrat Party right now appears to just be blowing up their face. Case in point, here's Chuck Schumer a couple of days ago trying to talk about how Trump doesn't understand tariffs.
Let's just take Super Bowl Sunday, okay? It's going to affect beer, okay? Most of it, Corona here, comes from Mexico. It's going to affect your guac, because what is guacamole made of? Avocados, both from Mexico.
See, that's the kind of cringe stuff that might have worked in the 90s, but it doesn't work in modern day 2024, 2025. And in the matter of DOGE, my friends, public opinion is fully behind the movement right now, with the elected Democrats already twisting in the wind. They are coming across as useless, as feckless, and worst of all, they are seen as ridiculous. And so because of this, average leftists are now trying to take matters into their own hands. You have the federal union workers now trying to form their own protest against Elon Musk and his DOGE department. Unfortunately for them, they decided to go full cringe with this one. Watch this.
Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against DOGE. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
Man, who thought this was a good idea? Oh, God.
Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Trump's coming for our unions. He wants us all to fail. He wants us to bow to him, but we want him in
And this
jail.
goes on. There's a whole another minute to this, which we're not going to endure together. This is too much, but you get the point. Yeah, that's enough of that. Okay, so the point is nothing is working right now to stop the Trump administration. They are barreling through, wiping out any opposition, with one exception. It is the final failsafe for the Democrat Party, my friends, one which they have repeatedly shored up for a very long time, for decades now, for one such emergency as this. I'm speaking, of course, of the judicial branch. Lawfare is a term now popularized in everyday normal conversation. It has become part of the public vernacular because of these kinds of activist judges have been trying to take Trump out. You see, judges have heard the bat signal. They understand the mission. It is do whatever it takes, bend or break whatever laws you have to, just stop Trump. They've been doing this for 8 years prior to the current administration, and now they're trying again here. Now, this is an article from Breitbart that discusses this. This is titled this is by Alex Marlowe, who writes Lawfare Judges Making Unprecedented Efforts to Shut Down Trump's Agenda. Let's take a look. So he writes, here are several activist judges who are trying to take control of the government for the deep state as we speak. There is Judge Angel Kelly, U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts, nominated by President Joe Biden, a recent appointee. He says, yesterday, Kelly granted a restraining order against the National Institutes of Health funding cuts. The Trump administration had moved to cap indirect costs or reimbursements for, quote, overhead expenses on university research at 15%. Seems reasonable to me. This, by the way, is fundamental, he writes, to the Trump administration's agenda of slashing waste, but it was met with strong pushback from the universities, and Kelly immediately stepped in on their behalf, meaning the universities were crying like, it's not fair, it's not funding their slush fund. So Kelly stepped in to save the day. Now, Kelly has a history, he writes, of judicial activism, and this is hardly a secret. Senator Elizabeth Warren, aka Pocahontas, said in 2021 that Kelly had made it her personal mission to bring about change through her role on the bench. That seems like a problematic statement. And she has had a number of controversial and noteworthy decisions as well. For example, she ruled that a police officer did not have a right to First Amendment protections when he criticized a bill called the George Floyd Act on his personal Facebook page. The officer had called Floyd a criminal in his post. She cited the bogus Black Lives Matter talking point, Black Lives Matter meaning the hate group BLM, that the vast majority of protests were peaceful. Yeah, sure they were. While departments across the country met many of these same protests with tear gas arrests, flash grenades, and more. And of course, there was murders, burning down cities, and all the good stuff for the hate group BLM. Let's see. She also dismissed a complaint from a Tufts University who sued the university for tuition and fees due to canceled in-person classes during the COVID-19 pandemic. And she had a bunch of other COVID-19 pandemic-related rulings, which we won't get into this because we're on YouTube. Now, Kelly has been also known to take a soft-on-crime approach. In February of 2024, for example, she sentenced a FedEx driver who stole and sold 3 guns from packages to just 6 days in prison and only 250 hours of community service. The stolen firearm conviction can carry a 10-year prison sentence, and fines can be up to $250,000 per offense. Next up, we've got Judge Amy Berman Jackson, U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, nominated by our good old President Barack Hussein O. Now, Jackson recently made news by temporarily reinstating the fired head of the Office of the Special Counsel, Hampton Dellinger, a Biden appointee, meaning Trump can't fire the guy, which seems problematic. She is known as a clear partisan with a long history of attacking Trump and his Republican allies. And this judge, he points out, presided over the Russian collusion cases and multiple January 6th Capitol riot cases where she has built a reputation for opining on her judicial philosophy for an hour or more during procedural courtroom check-ins. Next up, we've got Chief Judge John J. McConnell Jr. Oh boy, this is someone we've talked about recently on this channel. He is a Democrat donor. McConnell is attempting to block another spending freeze from Trump and is even taking the extreme approach of threatening administration officials with criminal charges if it is not reversed. But McConnell, Breitbart writes, is more than just a typical Democrat. He is a committed activist. While he was in private practice as an attorney until 2009, McConnell donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Democratic campaigns and political action committees, including the 2008 presidential campaigns of Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Barack Obama. According to Federal Election Commission records, he also donated over $8,000 to Democratic Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse in Sheldon's 2006 campaign. He has also worked at the ACLU, but he was on the board of directors for the Rhode Island branch of Planned Parenthood for 4 years. In the last 30 years, he contributed $500,000 to federal political committees, more than any other judge nominated by President Barack Obama or Donald Trump. He donated about $190,000 to members of Congress, and at least $200,000 more went directly to the Democrat Party and its state affiliates. This according to the review of Federal Election Commission records. So the man clearly has a conflict of interest here. Then we've got our good judge Colleen Kolar-Kotelly, U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, nominated by President Bill Clinton back in the 90s. Kolar-Kotelly boldly stood out against Trump's efforts to cut government excess by blocking DOGE from obtaining access to certain Treasury Department's payment records. The judge is also known for having sentenced 7 pro-life activists to federal prison in a particularly cruel fashion. For example, the husband of activist Paula Paulette Harlow, 77, whom Kolar-Kotelly sentenced to prison, was thoroughly rebuked by the judge when he emphasized that his wife was dying and pleaded for mercy and leniency. In response, Kolar-Kotelly said that Harlow should make every effort to just stay alive as part of the tenets of your religion. So she's kind of a bitch. Then we've got our good Judge Paul Engelmayer, who we've talked about also recently on this channel. He is the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York and was nominated by President Barack Hussein Obama. Engelmayer blocked DOGE's access to the Treasury Department's payment system, and in his ruling, he forbade all political appointees, including the Treasury Secretary, from accessing the Department of Treasury data, which he has now stepped a little bit back on that and said, no, the Treasury Secretary at least can. As Senator Mike Lee explained to Alex Merlo in his show, he said, quote, "The ruling is just 4 pages long. It appears to me to all be boilerplate, pretty generic language with zero substantive legal analysis. It was issued ex parte, meaning that Trump administration lawyers weren't even allowed to argue. They weren't even in the room." And then we've got, wow, what a name, Senior Judge George O'Toole Jr. from the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts, nominated by President Bill Clinton. So also back in the 90s. Now, O'Toole, Breitbart writes, has already tried to buck Trump in 2 significant ways. First, he blocked Trump's federal government employee buyout even after 65,000 federal workers had already taken Trump up on the offer. This prolonged a pause on the deferred resignation program. And he has also blocked the transfer of trans women, aka biological males, to men's prisons. This ruling rebuffs part of Trump's 2 sexes executive order, so he's trying to undo this from taking full effect. Then we've got Chief Judge Kenneth J. Gonzalez of the U.S. District Court for the District of New Mexico, nominated by President Barack Hussein O. Gonzalez has made headlines by blocking the deportations of Venezuelan criminals to Guantanamo Bay. He's trying to stop deportations. He was once a political operative working for New Mexico Democrat Senator Jeff Bingaman as his legislative assistant. Though it was more than 20 years ago, during that time, Bingaman supported a myriad of political positions that were contrary to the MAGA worldview. For example, he voted no on increasing penalties for drug offenses, no on spending international development funds on drug control, no voting on abstinence education, no capping foreign aid, etc., etc. There's a long list here. You could pause the video if you really want to read through all of it, but I won't subject you all to it here. Now, the pattern is clear, Breitbart writes. These are political operatives using the judicial system to pass a de facto legislation that blocks elements of the Trump agenda. Maybe some of this will get overturned, but it gums up the works and undermines the agenda of the democratically elected president, which is the point. See, none of this is exactly new, by the way. During Trump's first term, 92% of nationwide injunctions to stop President Trump against his policies came from judges appointed by Democratic presidents. And while long-term, most of these obstacles will be overcome, as all of these legal battles will likely end up at the Supreme Court, where Trump has the distinct advantage of a 6-3 conservative majority, it still is going to take a long time to get there. It is a delaying tactic by the left, at least in part. But I believe it's more than that. I actually think that these judges are trying to goad Trump to publicly ignore their rulings. They are going crazier and crazier and doing more outlandish rulings, hoping that he will simply say, screw this, I'm not going to do this, we're going to just forge ahead. The problem that the Democrat Party has right now, my friends, is that the public opinion is solidly behind Donald Trump. He has a 53% national approval rating, which is the highest of his career. But the left still thinks that the judicial activism is where they can fight, where that's a hill that they can die on. If they can just get Trump to ignore court orders instead of taking the long, arduous legal battle to win all of these court cases, and if he just decides to say, screw it, we're going to go our own way, then they can claim that he is a dictator. They'll say, oh, see, we told you, he was Hitler, 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 Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. We did not see that coming, right? Now, sure, they've been crying wolf on the same subject for years, but that doesn't mean they won't try it again. I think that they believe that this will work, that it could damage Trump. Now, I'm not suggesting that this tactic will actually work, but it does feel like that this is the Democratic Party strategy. And we've already seen some Trump allies encouraging Trump to do this. You've got Scott Jennings, a CNN political commentator and Trump supporter, who called for Trump to, quote, absolutely defy court orders blocking his executive actions. And then you've got Elon Musk, for example, calling for judges to be removed as they are incompetent, or worse. Which, by the way, isn't necessarily a bad idea to get rid of corrupt judges. But this, too, is a long process. It's difficult to remove judges. So while in the long run it would be very helpful Short term, I don't think it'll provide much of a viable solution to Trump's problem here. And so in the meantime, the jury is still out on how all of this will end up. But in the court of public opinion, I believe that these actions, both from the Democrat Party and from the judicial activists, are only going to serve to further fuel the anger of the American people. I think it is going to help Donald Trump's approval rating in the long run. And so because of this, if the Democrat Party are not careful, this too could blow up in their face. The midterms seem like a long way off right now, and anything could happen in the meantime. However, if this momentum were to keep up, and Trump continues to gain in popularity, this could end up being a huge bloodbath for the Democrat Party come 2026.